Um, Hi everyone, my name is Elran Ettinger. I'm a senior game designer at Supersonic's hybrid division, and I'm joined here today by my dear colleague, Carlos. Carlos, say hi.
Hello, hello everyone.
Um, it's very exciting to be here. It's both of us first Super Monday, so we might be a bit nervous, but we'll try our best. Um, so I just want to thank you all for your time, for joining us today. Uh, and let's start. So what are we going to do today? What we want to do today is give you a very first basic guide for what you should do with your first time user experience. For those of you that have been spent some time in the industry for a long time or a short time, you all like must have heard like those four letters FTUE. Some pronounce it FTUE, some FTUE. Me personally, I prefer FTUE. Just a second. Oop. So what's the agenda for today? I'm gonna do a short talk and let you guys share with you guys some tips and some common practices on how should you approach like your FTUEs in your side inside your games. And then I'm gonna pass the stage over to Carlos, which gonna talk with you guys about designing tutorials that keeps player playing. At the end of the session, we're gonna have a short live Q&A. So if you guys have any questions or wanna find out like anything else about FTUEs or game intros, tutorials, feel free to write down your questions below and we'll try answering as many of them as possible. So let's go. Your guide to first time user experience, FTUE. So why is first impression so important? I can say that a good FTUE is very much like a good first date. A good first date will lead to another date and maybe later to a relationship. And that's what we want to establish with our players. It's time to really come at your best, show off your uniqueness, and really engage with that player. As you know, players download the games, and if they're not engaged immediately, they will probably drop off. So the important thing to note here is that we have one shot, like in a first date, to impress the partner, the player, and create like a meaningful relationship with him. So that's why an FTUE is very important. So how do we want to make a great first impression? I'm gonna go over a few tips and common practices that I hope we will be able to implement into your games. So let's start. Act fast. As I mentioned before, you need to build a connection. The first moments really shape the player's relationship with your game. So you really have to try and engage with him as soon as possible and not linger with like cinematics or at least give him a way to skip it and just jump into the game as soon as possible to understand why he's here. You need to immerse quickly. You really need to instantly showcase the mood, theme, and gameplay of your game. You need to avoid friction, which means taking out any kind of ads, forced account creation, or purchase pop-up right at the beginning. I want the players to have a clean experience as possible, just him and the gameplay, trying to connect them as much as possible. The last thing is you have to meet player expectations. Most of the time, players will arrive to your game, download it, and play it through a commercial, through an ad they watched, which gave them kind of an expectation of what they're gonna be facing inside of your game. You need to try and meet this expectation by really not going too far with your ads and really like showing off your gameplay right off the bat. Next, a good FTUE is really the time where your game needs to shine and show what you have, what you're presenting to your players. You really have to show your uniqueness and your game's value. You really need to showcase the unique features. Now, unique features don't have to be gameplay. They can be graphics, characters, maybe even your game theme, but you really need to put in front like what differs your game from other games. So players will be able to jump in and say, wow, this is a unique game. It's not like another match 3 I've played for 1,000 times. The second thing is you need to clarify what sets you apart. players are spending their time in our games, you really want them to understand what makes your game different, what sets it apart, and why should they spend their time playing your game. Next thing is focus on excitement. You need to emphasize what makes the game fun and engaging. Let's say you have a game that's based off a merging game, but has another tower defense element to it. You really want to showcase it right off the bat, because players are used to merge games, but you want to show what differs your game from theirs. Moving on. Balance guidance and exploration. By the way, guys, I hope you're having fun as much I had using ChatGPT to create all those images over the weekend. So balance guidance and exploration. Carlos will talk a bit about it in a few minutes, but basically, players don't like being schooled. They want to learn through playing, through trying stuff, through exploring, and you really have to adjust the balance between being a teacher and letting them go out into the yard and explore and do whatever they want. So it's a very fine balance, but you have to make sure that your FTUE asks them to take actions and not just showing them everything using text. The second is you need to use contextual lessons. You have to teach players during gameplay. They have to make and take actions during the gameplay, actually perform actions, and that will help them understand what's going in the game. They have to learn through playing and not learn and then play. Next, a good strategy to go to when designing your game's FTUE is maybe trying and adding a narrative layer to the game. Stories, narratives, they usually capture players' interest and engage them. They give them a reasoning to why they are performing this kind of like actions. Let's say we have a match 3 game, but the theme is a monster and a castle, and you need to help the king restore the castle. It already gives you a meaning and doesn't make your levels and your gameplay into this kind of like boring, mindless puzzle mechanic. Last thing is narrative helps you build intrigue. So basically, if you keep on unlocking and unfolding the story as the game progresses, it helps create mystery, like in the eyes of the players who are always looking forward to what's the next thing that's gonna happen. I'm gonna keep on playing until this checkpoint because I want to see what's coming next. Next thing, and this is like it's not for anyone, but I think some of the times you need to take a risk and challenge your players right off the bat. Usually, mobile players have already played games that are similar to your game. They've already like know kind of like how the mechanics work, what's the goal of the game, and sometimes a way to capture them is to increase the difficulty of the game. Now, I'm not saying that you have to immediately make them game over, but you have to create the illusion of possible failure. What it does, it makes the player engage more, thinking more about what are the actions he needs to do, take into account the moves he's got left or the currency that he's spending, and really help them immerse into the game. Now, when you do that and you want to challenge your players, especially at the beginning, you need to reward them very well for taking the right action, because you don't want to cause frustration by always making the player lose. You need to make him feel like he's about to be able to lose, but then reward him big time when he's doing like the right thing and moving forward. By the way, this picture totally looks like me playing in my Game Boy when I was like about 6. Next, track the right metrics. So as you guys know, we're trying to be as data-driven as possible. And I think especially during a game FTUE, a first-time user experience, it's very important to monitor retention and churn, meaning you're trying to get, I guess, to like a benchmark of around like 40% day one retention. And that already means you're going into a good direction with your FTUE. But you want to create some sort of like funnel for your FTUE and its steps, and make sure that you are familiar with where are players churning the game. You need to have like a step-by-step kind of funnel and really be able to pinpoint what are churn points and try to address them. I don't think an FTUE is something that you get like right on the first time. You probably will have to do some iterations and make sure that the experience becomes like very smooth for the player to go through and have as highest as a completion rate as possible for your first time user experience. The last thing you need to do is to analyze the game economy. This especially applies to idle games, city builders, and the such. You really want to make sure the player doesn't have to work too hard right off the bat. And if you can, you need to analyze the game economy to make the entire experience very super smooth. Last thing, I think, wow, we got to the end very fast. Make sure they come back. So how do we make sure players come back once they've finished your FTUE? I think the most common practice is to use open loops. What do I mean when I say open loops? So as you can see here on the right, what we have here is the goal, the anticipation. A player can usually wait for getting a new weapon, opening a new biome. This is something he's waiting for and what he wants to achieve. Now we have the challenge, which is actually the gameplay itself. The levels, the enemies he has to beat, the missions he needs to perform. And lastly, once he does that, he gets the reward. Now, when he gets the reward, that's usually when we insert like he gets like the dopamine from completing his task and being rewarded. And that's when you want to immediately have the players already start another new loop. Meaning, whenever a player finishes this kind of gameplay loop, you want him to immediately slip into a new one. It could be accomplished through missions, through achievements, or any kinds of like progression monitoring metrics. Layer progression. Make sure you have each completed goal lead to a new one, longer the challenge. Leverage the psychology. So players naturally want to finish unfinished tasks they've started. So like I mentioned before, make sure they've always got a task open and something to do right now. Last thing is reward persistence. A lot of the games usually reward players based off skill. Now, I think this is a good like practice, but we can also like reward players for commitment and time spent in the game. So adding stuff like daily rewards, reward calendars, and even just like offline earnings for coming back into the game is a very good practice for us to get back into the players back into the game. I think this is it on my side. Of course, guys, if you've got any questions, feel free to write them down and we'll try to answer as many of them at the end of the session at the Q&A. And now I want to pass the mic over to Carlos Fernandez.
Thank you very much, Elran. It was super interesting. Hello everyone. My name is Carlos Fernandez. I'm senior game artist here at Supersonic. My main job is to help you with your visuals, the workflow, UI, UX in your games in order to turn them into a super hit. And today I'm going to be helping you and giving you some guidelines and examples about the tutorials in order to improve the game and, of course, its retention. So let's get into it. Why are tutorials so important to get right? While learning how to play a game happens while playing the game, there are certain mechanics and new mechanics that needs to be reinforced or they need to be learned. This is especially important in free-to-play games. Whenever we are buying or purchasing a game, we are much more prone to spend some time with frustration or deal with more patience and try to learn the mechanics step by step. However, in free-to-play games, we are more easier frustrated, and that can lead to uninstalling the game and search for another option in the game. So let's start with the basics. There are several tutorial layouts that we can differentiate. These are really important because most of the players are also familiar with them and they can relate. So it's already an easier step to jump in. We can differentiate different tutorial layouts, such as a pop-up screen, full screen, in-game, overlay, and organic. Let's get a little bit into details. So the first one, pop-up screen. This is the most common of all of them. It's super versatile. You can explain from a booster to a reward to an unlock an area. It has the benefit that they require the player to acknowledge before continuing. We are normally having this class button or this tap to claim, something like that at the end of the tutorials where the player is already aware and has gone through the whole tutorial before clicking that button. Here we can find an example like in Rise Up Balloons from Supersonic where we are explaining the booster. And here on this in the next slide, I have prepared for Trash Tycoon. This is a tycoon game from Supersonic. And in this case, for example, we are explaining how to unlock an area and how the player can benefit out of it. Next one would be full screen tutorials. These are normally coming in a shape of GIFs or a static image or a sequence of images. They are really optimizing the UX by eliminating any distractions. These are mostly used for mechanics that are less intuitive and that they need a little bit more of time. Also in puzzle games, such as there are some certain mechanics that are difficult to grasp at the very beginning, such as drag to merge or match and merge. This is a good option for those kind of puzzles. And it's also good for action and combat games. Next one would be in-game tutorials. These are these ones that we can find with tooltips or some hand pointers. They are also used for mechanics that are needing some reinforcement. This kind of layout is quite useful for hybrid games that have these several layers, and there are different mechanics that needs to be added slowly, and they need to some reinforcement. So that those are mostly common in idle, simulation, and tycoon games. Overlay tutorials. These are great for hybrid games. They have the good benefit of that experienced players, they can basically ignore it and keep playing while the new players can really benefit out of them. They are really not, they are really disrupted and really flexible, so they can be useful in several different cases. They are, as I said, really common in hybrid casual games, also in idle, tycoon, and simulation games. And we have, last but not least, organic tutorials. These are not a tutorial layout per se, but I thought it would be interesting for you guys to hear about this one. I can show you better with an example. We have here Electric City from Supersonic. I can't play at the moment. Maybe Elran, if you can play the video.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So here you can see that the lights of the world are turning off, and then there's a quick zoom in to the world where you can see somebody turning a machine on. And from that moment on, you're already aware of what is the mechanic of the game and how to play it. This is gonna save you a lot of time on making tutorials afterwards. It's making much more dynamic and flexible. We have, you all play Fall Guys for sure. For example, they are, before starting any race, the camera zoom in towards the goal and then zoom out straight to your position. And while this panning is happening, you can already see, you can already have some hints, where are the obstacles, what is the best strategy to go in. And that's already kind of a tutorial, but it's not a tutorial, but it's much more dynamic. So once we have the tutorials layout decided, we can go to what makes a tutorial great. There are basically 5 key elements that can make a tutorial great. These are clarity, contrast, art style, creativity, and consistency. Clarity is basically avoid messy elements that can break your user experience. We've all seen this in some games. The text is really small to read, buttons are really small to tap. There are weird shapes that you don't understand if this is a button or is part of the gameplay. Is it everything confusing? You can have here an example of a train ride on the early versions where we could see that all the elements are basically same and they were a bit blending. This combined with the contrast where the gameplay and the UI is not separated and they are all blend. You don't know what's part of the game, what is a button. So we have to make sure that we differentiate the UI from the gameplay. Here you can see how we upgrade a little bit the train ride version by creating tailor-made shapes for the icons. Player already can see where do they need to click whenever they need the income or the speed. And also we try to clean a little bit the screen and organize the elements so it's much more friendly for the user to play with. Our style, whenever we are starting a game, we are all having a certain style that is coming with this game. So you can see here several options like simulation game and runner game. This is good because the players, they already come in with certain experience and they are already expecting a certain style in the genre. This is really good as a starting point, but we also have to keep in mind and to include creativity in there. We don't want to be copying and pasting the same game over and over. We need to be smart. We need to add creativity. Feel free to get out of the box and try to find new boundaries. And last one would be consistency. This for me is one of the most important in the games. It needs to be, all the elements of your game needs to feel that they belong to the game. It couldn't feel that we are just purchasing assets from some stores and patching them everything together inside. It needs to be all the elements and all the screens that are happening in the tutorial feel that they belong to the game. So we have the layout, we have all the different elements that we need to make sure that they are in there. Once we are ready to, there are several things that we need to make sure before implementing it. So make the tutorial seamless and relaxed. At the beginning of our games, we are trying to include the visuals, explain the characters, the style, everything that is in our game, and adding on top of it the tutorials, which could be a little bit overwhelming for the player. So we need to be smart when we are introducing and explaining our mechanics. The tutorial should be felt as part of the game. It can be felt as an isolated part that you just put it on top of it. It should feel dynamic and organic. Players are not fools. As Elran already explained a little bit, we are all coming from the real world. We are all having real experiences. We don't need to treat the players as they just born. They already know how the car wheel spins and that the snow is slippery. So let's try to just explain the core mechanic of the game and let the player explore and make mistakes and go for it. It's gonna be fun and it's gonna be much more entertaining for the player. Not too long didn't read. This is a classic on tutorials when we overkill the screen with full of information and text and more text in the small windows that are popping up. This leads to the player being frustrated. In most of the cases, they are skipping the tutorial and then they go to the gameplay and they don't know how to proceed or what to do. So that's more frustration. So they will uninstall the game and try something else that they will be having fun with. So we are already having all the elements to implement it on the game. Before doing it, we have to make sure that we are double checking certain things, how and why. So it's important to explain the player how to use a mechanic, but it is more important that they need to understand why they need to use this mechanic. If once they are already aware that why this mechanic is important and why do they need to use it, then they will just go on their own and keep using it and apply it along the gameplay. But if they just know that there is a mechanic, but they don't know what is the reason to go for it, they will just basically ignore it and eventually forget that is even a mechanic there. So they won't even get advantage of it. In-game currency, please, let's not push players from the beginning to purchase our currency. It's much smarter to just give them a free sample or show them a little bit what the capabilities of the currency can be. And once they are already aware of the benefit of using this currency, then they will come back and they will purchase and they will try to get used to these ones. Fun, this is something that we have to double check in every step. Is the tutorial fun? Is it making it entertaining? If a good tip here is normally to try to take a fun part of your game and take the new mechanic that you want to implement and try to blend them together so there is some new adventure experience for the player rather than feel like a tutorial. And then, of course, we can just rely on intuition all the time. So that's why A/B testing is really important. We need to go back and forth every time to see where if the player is getting bored, if he's getting lost, if it's getting frustrated, when is it quitting and why is it quitting, and be eager to make any changes or any updates that we need to do in order to make the tutorial as satisfying as possible. And once you blend all of this, you will have a nice and engaging tutorial. So this is the end of the presentation. I would like to thank Elran for the inspiring presentation, and also thank you all guys for being with us today. So I believe we have some time for questions. So please feel free to write them and we will try to answer all of them.